Welcome back. Well, as I'm sure you can tell from the high visibility colors in the sweatband, today is project day. We were working on a project, but I've sort of taken a little temporary time out from that project to throw this one in because it's timely. I managed to get the supplies earlier this week. Quick, easy, cheap, dirt cheap. And it's one of those projects where you walk away with a lot of satisfaction for the $2.20 the project costs you. So we're making our little photo booth next. All right, so what we're going to do is we're making a different photo booth. The first time we made one, we did it with white foam core. And that is really useful and versatile and everybody loves it. But one of the things that I've noticed, and people have pointed it out to me, so it's not just I'm being picky. It's like I have potential buyers saying, did you know my white items are looking very washed out against a white background? Now, I've known this and I should have done something about it a while ago, but this week came up with the materials I needed. They were at the dollar store. It's not that big a deal. It's just finally occurred to me, just why don't you grab that? So what we need to do this are 2 pieces of foam core. And you get foam core anywhere, dollar store, Walmart, hardware stores, Michael's, any place that would sell construction paper or poster board is going to sell this. So we get 2 pieces of foam core board. Cost is about $1 a piece. Mine was $1 a piece because it was the dollar store. I think at Walmart it's 99 cents. I know other people may have different little prices, but it's not going to be expensive no matter where you get it. 2 pieces. Now, the first thing we do, as you will see, is we need to remove the labels from our foam core board. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is, or it will be if you don't. The adhesive on the back, it's sort of one of those low-tack adhesives, so it peels off easily. Just sort of get your nail under the corner, pick it up, and it's not one of those stickers that comes apart in a million different pieces. This just peels right off. But that adhesive, if it sits around on your foam core for any length of time, is going to be a real mess. It's going to be a nightmare cleaning it off, and you could end up ruining your foam core cleaning it off if you do it at a later date. So don't store your board with the labels. You get it home, take the label off right away. It will come off quickly and cleanly, and it won't leave a lot of adhesive residue behind. And that's what we want to avoid, because it's not so bad. This one was black, but if you have a white foam core board and you have this nasty little bit of excess residue, you know it's going to pick up every speck of dust and dirt that comes its way. And pretty soon, your nice little white photo board is going to be nasty. It's going to have a dirty black smudge on it. So that's the first thing we're going to do. We are out on the patio once again with our foam core board, and as you can see, I have 2 pieces here. The foam core is nominally 20 by 30 inches. So what that means when I say nominally is it's not 20 by 30 inches. It's simply close to 20 by 30 inches. It's actually about 20 1/4 by 29 11/16. Yes, I actually measured it right down to the 16th of an inch for you. Oh, here. By the way, if you want to know what farm country looks like, so what I'm going to do is the very first step is the removal of this. Now, I started this one so that you could see it pulls up pretty easily. And I'm just going to stick that over here. I'm just going to shove that somewhere. And here, if you have nails, it's reasonably easy to just pick at a corner and then pull it up. Now, the reason pulling these stickers off now is important, rather than waiting until eventually they get in the way, is over time they will become sticky. And when you pull it off, you'll have there is a little bit of a sticky residue here that I can feel. And if you want to get rid of that, there are a lot of ways to do it. One of the easiest ways is to just grab a piece of tape, and in this case, I will probably be using regular packing tape, and just use the sticky edge of the packing tape to lift off the residual stickiness. And why don't we just pause for a second? I'll grab some packing tape and show you how to do that. So, we peel off the label, but I noticed there was a little bit of residue. Probably means that foam core board had been sitting around at the dollar store for a little longer than it should have been. So I got it into my head I was going to clean it up. Well, that was a mistake. I should have just let it go. It wasn't that big a deal. But here you go. I'm going to share the mistake with you anyway. Okay, well, here is my favorite tape, which is Duck Easy Start. And I had pulled a piece out, and I was going to try to remove that little bit of stickiness. And here, look what happened. So, bottom line is I'm going to put up with the stickiness rather than simply ruin my entire board trying to get rid of something that's barely a problem to begin with. So, stupid me, lesson learned. Oh, by the way, the reason I like this tape is because, yes, it does start easily. There's a downside, and that is it doesn't always stick very well to the finished surfaces of the cardboard boxes I use. That can be a problem sometimes. However, I think it's offset by the fact that my customers don't have to fight with the tape. The tape will come off. If they see the tape, if they grab a corner, they can pull it up, and whatever item they have bought from me is not going to end up in pieces on the floor. So, clearly though, this is not how you get rid of stickiness. Maybe next time around, I'll just try some Goo Gone on a cotton swab. Ooh, lesson learned. All right, we're going to pause for a minute, and then we're going to move on to the next step. So as you can see, I made more of a mess trying to get that little bit of adhesive residue off the paper than I would have made, if I had just ignored it. Frankly, I would have made less mess if I had just put a little Goo Gone on a paper towel and wiped it off that way, which I will probably consider next time. Actually, next time I'm probably just going to leave it alone. I did that to myself. That was an unnecessary mess I made. However, because our little photo booth only really takes about 1 1/3 sheet of foam core board, that was excess anyway. So, next, Next thing we're going to do is we need to measure out. And the first measurement is going to be on that one piece that is our back piece. Now it's approximately 20 by 30. And as I'm sure I mentioned in the filming of this, I think it's like 20 and a quarter by 29 and 11/16. It's a little over 20 on the short side and a little under 30 on the long side. Not a big deal, but it does tell you that you can't take the measurements for granted. So in other words, you're not going to say, oh, well, I know it's 30, so I can measure from either side. No, you can't. Now, the dimensions I like to use is an 8-inch strip down the back, and then the sides flaring out, and the sides are about 11 inches long, and they flare out, and this gives me about 9 inches from the back of my little photo booth to the front edge of the bottom. That works for me. It works really well for fashion dolls because it's 20 inches high, and fashion dolls are 11 and a quarter, unless you go to Tammy. Tammy's 12. It's a good size for dolls, so that's what I always used it for. Now it's a good size for small bits of porcelain. So that's why I stick with this size. Might not work for you. If this doesn't meet your needs, hey, change it. Do it any way you want. The principle is the same. You don't have to use my measurements. If you want a backside that's 12 inches instead of, the 8 inches, go for 12. Go right ahead. It's not a problem. You can customize this any way you want. Just remember the basic relationships, and then you can tweak the measurements yourself. So when we start measuring this, what I did was I measured my 11-inch flared sides. I came in on both ends and measured 11 inches in from that nice clean manufacturer's edge. Now that doesn't give me 8 inches on the back. Remember, it's not exactly 30 inches. It gives me something like 7 and 11/16 of an inch on the back. Close enough. I mean, I'm not going to be super picky about this, but you can see what I mean about the measurements not being critical, as long as both of the flared sides are the same size and the mark you make on the top of your sheet is the same distance from the edge as the mark you made on the bottom of your sheet. That's going to keep the edges all perpendicular. Very important, because you want straight lines. You don't want anything going wonky and crooked. This all depends on perfectly straight lines, perfectly straight cuts. Well, or as perfectly straight as any of us can really get them. So measure in at the top, make a mark, measure in at the bottom, make a mark, just do this on both sides. And if you wanted, say, 12 inches, you would just take 2 inches off, whereas I made 11-inch flared sides. You would go in 9 inches on each of your sides, and you'd have a much wider section in the back. If, for example, you did a lot of work on, let's say, dinner plates that you were putting up on stands, that would give you a 12-inch background, more than sufficient. So I would say no problem, not in the least. And remember, these little photo booths will stack one on top of another. You can fit them in like socks. It's not a big deal. So if you want to have 4 or 5 of them built to different custom sizes you need, you can do it. Heaven knows it's cheap enough. All right, so we measure, and let's take a look at exactly how I took those measurements and made the marks. Okay, so here is our next step. Let's go right over here. I am making a photo booth that is approximately 8 inches across the back and has little wings, those are the sides, that are approximately 11 inches long. Now, life in the country. The way I have measured for cutting is I have come in from this end and measured over 11 inches, and I have done the same here. Now what that means is that 8-inch back piece I have is actually going to be something along the lines of 7 and 11/16. However, that will guarantee that my sides are the same. Now I didn't mark this with a pencil. I went right in here, and I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to see if I can just, there, I got my fingernail in it. I made a nick. Did the same thing over here. I made a nick. And I did likewise on the bottom. There's one of the nicks, and here's the other. And the next thing I'm going to do is cut. So, I am going to now I have my ruler lined up against the 2 nicks, the one on the top and the one on the bottom. And what I'm going to do is take a knife. I like these little wallpaper knives. I'm going to leave the bottom exposed just about that much. And I am going to run the blade from one cut right down to the other. All I really want to do is cut through, let me show you, this back thickness of paper. As you can see, it's very thin. And I will be cutting a little into the foam core. But what I do not want to do is go all the way through to the paper on the other side. The tiniest cut through the back end and the foam core will snap, leaving the front paper intact. So, we're going to pause for a minute while I do that, and then we'll see how it works out. All right. Next thing we're going to do is really simple. We've got everything measured. We mark, we cut. Here we go. All right. We're going over here, and this is my line. It's very hard to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking my piece of foam core right over to the edge of the table and just dropping it down a little. I'm going to let it fold across the edge, just like that. I'm going to turn it the other way. Same thing. I'm going to line up that cut with the edge of the table, and then a little tiny bit of pressure. That's all it takes. And now, as you see, it will bend any way I want it to. There we go. All right, our next step, we're going to put that down. It'll go somewhere in the wind. Rather looks like the wings on the Flying Nun's hat, for those of you who will recall that TV series. Now, once we have our marks and we've made our cuts, and remember with these cuts, we are scoring. We're just drawing the knife through the top layer of paper. That's all. Just, we're not cutting all the way through. Be very careful about that, because the underside of that paper is what's going to hold your entire photo booth together. And don't worry, it's strong enough because the board is very lightweight. So you just score down. That's all you need to do. and then drop it over the edge of a table. It's the same as drywall, for those of you who are more comfortable with drywall. All right, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm sure most of us are a lot more comfortable with foam core board than we are with an 8x12 sheet of drywall. Actually, no, it's 4x8 these days. Isn't that standard? Yes. All right. So this is sort of, a 2x3. It's a little, think of it as mini drywall. Score, don't cut all the way through. Cut the paper only, and then it'll just bend on that score line. All right, the next thing we do is we measure the bottom. So let's take a look at that. All right, so the next thing I did is held my back piece up on top of what is going to be my bottom piece. See, like this. And that is how it's going to be shaped when it's done. And then I took a pencil and made a line on the bottom piece across this back edge. Now, my line is not even. My line is not even. It's hard to see because we're starting to lose a little of our daylight, but the fact is that my line is about 9¼ inches from the edge on this side and about 9½ on that side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split the difference and make a new line. And then I'm going to cut it. Well, as you could see, my bottom was not perfectly straight. I put it on and things must have just jiggled around because, it's a lot easier if you have help with this, but you can do it by yourself. So when I made the mark, it wasn't straight. So I just had to recut that mark. I just altered it a little. It was, I think, 9¼ on one side and 9½ on the other. So it became 9�3/8. I just split the difference and went right down the middle. Not a big deal at all. These things are very easy to change, to alter. It's not a problem. So after I got my bottom marked, the next thing we have to do is just cut it along that line, and then we drop our top portion. This is our back and sides on top of this bottom, and then measure. We can make a mark. You just want to make sure they're both the same size. The little bit of triangle, as you will see, I hate to get ahead of myself because I start talking about the triangle, you don't know what I'm talking about. It's a little triangle we're going to cut out on each side. As long as those triangles are the same size, everything is good. So let's take a look at that. Well, now that I've cut that little piece out, and remember it was about 9�3/8 of an inch from front to back, I've got my backing, this portion, on top again, and I'm measuring out these little triangles. And the little triangles are approximately 6 inches in from the end to the back of our little photo booth. So I'm going to mark that and cut. Alright, so I measured in 6 inches from the end and cut right down to the corner, and I come up with this little trapezoid piece. Trapezoid, 2 parallel sides, and the other 2 sides do not have to be parallel. So we have this piece, and that's going to be our bottom. Now, these are the little wedges that I cut off. The next step involves our tape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 3 small pieces of tape, and I'm going to pop, well, no. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pause the camera take the tape off and then show you what I'm doing. All right, I have 3 small pieces of tape. They're about 1.5 inches square, and what I've done is I have just slipped them onto the underside of my little bottom piece here. There. Then I'm going to get the back and side pieces and just drop it on there and tape it in place. Okay, and then the last thing that needed to happen is we need to put it all together and take a picture. Now, you will notice, because I'm going to show you what it looks like when it's all together and when it's set up for photographing, but you will notice that things are a little wonky, not because they were cut badly, but because I was trying to take them with the camera in my hand. So it's like one hand, the wind was blowing, the camera, no. It's okay. It all came together the way it was supposed to when I actually put down the camera, picked up the tape, and taped it the way it should have gone. So here, let's take a look at what it looks like when it's done. So, as I've already said, that's going to have to be tweaked a little. I will take it indoors where I'm not fighting the wind and get those sides lined up properly. But in the meantime, as you can see, it is a black photo booth. It will hold something up to 20 inches high. Obviously, we have a good-sized area on the bottom. It's 9 inches. The front edge is 20 inches. We've got the back edge 9. This is a pretty decent-sized area here. Just to give you a little sense of what the size is. So, it's that simple. It was a total of $2. All right, that was it. $2, 3 pieces of tape, little photo booth. Now, that leftover bit, remember we used the entirety of one of our sheets, but we only used 1/3 of the second sheet. Save that. For one thing, it's going to be approximately, 30, it's about 20 by 20, this leftover piece. So it's big enough to use as a backdrop if you want to set it down on a table and photograph something from above. It's going to make a nice little backdrop. But what ends up happening over time with your little photo booth is the part of your photo booth that gets dirty and grubby and unusable is not going to be the sides, it's going to be the bottom. And with that little piece, assuming that you have a depth of less than 10 inches, mine was 9, you might want something deeper. I would suggest try not to go beyond 10, because that gives you the ability to cut 2 more bottoms out of the leftover material. And you can cut them, you can just trace your first bottom. Bang, bang, set them aside, and then when your bottom gets scuffed up, which it will, for me, the culprit is water. Sometimes I will take something out of the dish drainer to photograph it for sale, and I don't realize that all the water hasn't drained out of it yet, and then I'll have little splotches on the bottom of my foam core board. So after a while, too many splotches, too much mess, it starts to look a little grubby. Take it out, change it. And easily you can do that. As I say, if you stick with the dimensions I used, or if you don't vary by too much. I mean, I do want you to customize this for your own needs. But if you don't vary by too much, you will get 3 bottoms out of that second sheet. Even if you customize it by a lot, you're still going to get 2 bottoms out of it. So, good luck, have fun, and I will see you tomorrow.